Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, friends. Thank you for tuning in again to our channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so your friends can enjoy this spooky story too. Today, we're diving into a real-life haunting from Maple Street, a place known for its many paranormal encounters. Let's get into the story. In a small town in America, there stood an old house on Maple Street. The house had been vacant for many years, and despite its dilapidated appearance, locals believed it was haunted. Numerous stories circulated about strange noises and apparitions seen through the house's windows. People who dared to approach the house often reported feeling an eerie chill, even though the weather outside was warm. One of the most famous stories came from the Anderson family, who moved into the house in 1996. The family consisted of a mother, father, and two teenage children, Sarah and James. At first, the Andersons didn't believe the ghost stories surrounding the house. They thought it was all just myths. However, as soon as they settled in, things began to change. Sarah, who always felt something was off in the house, started hearing footsteps in the upper floors, even though no one was up there. On their first night, James woke up to strange sounds, like faint whispers coming from the living room. When he went to check, there was no one there, but the air in the house felt unusually cold. By the first week, the Andersons began to find objects moved without explanation. Plates they had just washed were found on the floor, and doors they locked at night would be open again when they woke up in the morning. The climax occurred on a very dark night, when Sarah was awakened by the sound of a woman crying outside her room. The sound was so real that she was too scared to leave her room. The next morning, Sarah's mother began to feel dizzy and weak, as if something was draining her energy, but she couldn't explain why. As the days passed, the eerie events in the Anderson household grew more intense. One night after dinner, Sarah and James decided to investigate the upstairs, which had always given them a strange feeling. The air was thick, as if something was lurking in the shadows. The old wooden floors creaked under their feet as they slowly made their way down the hallway. James, usually the braver of the two, had his doubts. He had heard the whispers, felt the chill in the air, but was still skeptical about what was really happening. Sarah, on the other hand, was terrified. She had seen shadows moving in the corner of her eyes and had often felt like someone was watching her. The idea of something or someone being in the house with them was becoming harder to ignore. They reached the attic door, which had always been locked, but that night it was open. Slowly, they stepped inside, their hearts pounding. The attic was dark and dusty, the only light coming from the dim glow of the moon filtering through the small window. As they explored the room, Sarah found an old portrait covered in layers of dust. The woman in the painting looked eerily familiar, almost as if it was someone they knew. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and they heard footsteps behind them. When they turned around, no one was there. The door to the attic slammed shut with a loud bang, causing them both to jump in fear. They rushed out, but the whispers continued to follow them. Later that night, as Sarah tried to sleep, she was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps approaching her room. The door creaked open, and the temperature dropped again. But when she looked around, there was no one there. The whispers were louder now, coming from every corner of the house. It was as if the house itself was alive, filled with the restless spirits of its past. The presence in the house was growing stronger, and the Andersons knew they had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. The Anderson family could no longer ignore the chilling events that seemed to haunt their every move. Each night brought new horrors, and the family was beginning to crack under the pressure. Mrs. Anderson, who had once dismissed the stories, now believed her house was cursed. She had consulted a local priest, hoping to find some explanation, but the priest only confirmed their fears. The house was haunted by the restless spirits of its previous owners. The Andersons learned that the house on Maple Street had a dark history. The original owner, a man named Thomas O'Donnell, had mysteriously disappeared in 1924. The house had sat vacant for years, changing owners frequently, but no one stayed long. Each owner had reported strange happenings, but no one had ever fully uncovered the truth. Some believed Thomas O'Donnell had been involved in occult practices, summoning spirits that still roamed the house. Desperate for answers, Sarah and James did some digging into the house's past. They found an old journal in the attic, written by Thomas O'Donnell himself. The journal spoke of strange rituals and dark entities he had attempted to summon. But there was one entry that stood out. The spirits are never truly gone. They linger, waiting to be set free. That night, the Andersons decided to leave. The house had broken them down, and they couldn't take the terrifying experiences anymore. As they packed their things, the whispers grew louder, as if the house was calling them to stay. But they refused to listen. They knew the house would continue to haunt whoever dared to move in next. As they drove away, the house loomed in the rearview mirror, its windows dark and empty. The whispers followed them for a while, but eventually faded, leaving the family in peace. However, no one in the town would ever forget the haunted house on Maple Street and the terrifying presence that still haunted its walls. The house remained abandoned, but the legend of its dark past lived on. The Andersons learned that the house on Maple Street had a dark history. The original owner, a man named Thomas O'Donnell, had mysteriously disappeared in 1924. The house had sat vacant for years after his disappearance, with reports of strange happenings and disturbing noises coming from it, even when it was empty. Some locals said they saw him, or at least a figure resembling him, walking around the house late at night, but no one dared to approach. After learning this, the family was desperate for answers. They reached out to a local historian who uncovered that Thomas O'Donnell was rumored to have practiced occult rituals in the house. He had a fascination with summoning spirits and had supposedly invited several entities into the home, hoping to gain power. But something went wrong, and the spirits he summoned turned vengeful. Some believed he was killed by one of the entities he had invited into the house, while others thought he was consumed by the evil forces he had unleashed. One evening, while searching through old documents in the house's attic, Sarah found an old tattered journal. The journal belonged to Thomas O'Donnell himself. As Sarah flipped through the pages, she read accounts of his encounters with dark forces and his increasing obsession with the supernatural. The last entry was written just before his disappearance. "They are here. I have awakened them. They will never leave." Feeling a sense of urgency, The Andersons decided to leave the house, but as they prepared to pack their things, they realized they were trapped. The doors and windows were locked from the outside, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't get out. The spirits in the house were not letting them go. It was then that Sarah had an idea. She remembered reading in Thomas O'Donnell's journal that there was one way to break the curse. They needed to confront the spirits head-on, show them that the house no longer held any power over them. But how could they do that when the house itself was alive with malevolent energy? They gathered in the living room, holding hands. And as they called out to the spirits, a cold wind swept through the house. The floorboards creaked and groaned, and then, from the corner of the room, a shadowy figure appeared. It was the figure of Thomas O'Donnell, his face twisted in anger. The spirits were not going to let them leave without a fight. The Andersons braced themselves for the final confrontation. Would they survive the night? Or would they become another tragic chapter in the house's dark history? Wow! What a chilling experience, right? The Anderson family's terrifying encounter with the spirits of Maple Street reminds us all that some things are better left undisturbed. Always respect the past and the mysteries it holds, because you never know what might be waiting for you in the dark. If you found this story gripping and spooky, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Is there a dark force lurking in your own neighborhood? Let us know. And as always, stay tuned for more mysterious and spine-chilling tales. Thanks for watching, and see you next time, if you dare.